Hi, my name is Christian Rogers, and my PowerPoint and video presentation is on worldwide change. My favorite article that I researched and read through out of all the articles that I did um, was the return from COVID 19. How can organizations protect themselves? Uh, I really liked all the sports business journals that we had to read throughout this semester, and I think this one is probably my favorite out of the ones that I got to read. Um, I found this article especially interesting to me because it not only addresses COVID 19, but it also addresses the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think it's really important to not only look at um, the fact that sports organizations are going to have to implement policies to protect themselves from COVID 19 and their health, but also look at how organizations are going to be viewed throughout this Black Lives Matter movement and the push for racial equality. Um, what was new and interesting to me, what I learned most was that sports organizations are going to have to come together to look for new policies to implement all throughout the next year or so. Um, they're going to have to also seek advisors externally to find new policies for themselves. And I think that's really interesting to see that sports organizations not only will have to implement policies from their ideas from interior sources, but also exterior, like health advisors and such, to find the best way to keep themselves, their employees, and fans all healthy. And it's also really interesting to see that uh, not only are they going to seek exterior help for that, but also the equality movement. Uh, I could see a lot of sports organizations seeking advising and help from exterior experts to help with their racial equality and keep them in good standing with the people that they serve. And why is this really interesting? I think it's really interesting because not only will this affect the next year or so, but also the coming years. These policies will be able to be held for any disease or any racial problem that comes up these next few years or the next far future. Um, every decision that an organization is going to make for COVID 19 and the racial equality movement is going to be very important because it sports organizations are already being called out for not uh, attending to or looking at racial equality. And I think it's really important to see that both the pandemic and Black Lives Matter movement are going to be addressed in the future. So, say there's a new pandemic disease that happens to come within the next 15 years, uh, the policies can be either rearranged or kept completely the same for as COVID-19, and we will be completely ready uh, in case that does happen. How does COVID-19 affect the world of sports? This article explains that all professional sports will have to implement policies to pertain not only to COVID-19, but to any disease that happens to come up. So, if these policies are made only for COVID-19, policies in the future will have to address all diseases. And it's it's also going to affect the workforce of sports business, um, holding all the employees accountable and giving them a rule book and addressing all the policies that are going to be implemented and holding all the employees accountable is going to be very important for everyone's health and safety, um, and punishments will have to be put in place for neglecting any of the policies that are implemented. And I think that's very important for the world of sports, because if employees start to get unhealthy and say one employee catches COVID-19, then that workforce is going to take a hit, considering all the drawbacks and the precautions that organizations are going to have to take. What happens with sports marketing? Sports marketing around the world will likely jump, in my opinion, when sports begin to start after the COVID-19 era, or all the holds that sports organizations are putting. This is due to the amount of TV viewers and streamers increasing. People will not want to leave their house due to safety reasons, and they will likely view TV sports more often and stream sports more often. And with that comes more advertisement and more views in general. And I think that's really important to look at, because these next couple of months, with sports starting back up like basketball and baseball, the views are going to skyrocket, because people are not going to want to attend games, but more often than not, they're going to watch them on the TV and stream, because sports have been lackluster throughout this pandemic. The impact on the workforce is very important to look at. The article has a guest expert by the name of Kelly Walton talk in this article. She says in the article, the best way to communicate expectations to employees and hold them accountable is to have a company policy that explains exactly what is expected and the consequences for noncompliance. She said, to ensure your workplace is safe and healthy, it is recommended employers have a communicable disease policy. And I completely agree. Organizations are going to have to kind of lay their foot down whenever it comes to all the policies they implement for COVID-19. It's going to be way more enforced than any other rule that they have, because if something goes wrong, something really goes wrong, and the organizations will take a massive hit to not only revenue, but to the workforce. And I think that's really important. What now? The sports industry will see a change not only from a fan standpoint, but also the players. Fans will see a massive change when going to see a sports team. Whenever you go to events and games in stadiums and coliseums, you're going to see a lot more rules pertaining to COVID-19, and you will see a lot more contactless payments, and a lot more space in between fans due to COVID-19. It's going to be very important to keep all those stadiums and keep all the fans healthy. Players will come in not being able to play for months after this pandemic, and I think that's going to change a lot of the players' mindset. I believe that players will come in more motivated to play better and to cherish their season a little more whenever they realize that it can be taken away with something like that. So I think they're going to be pushed to do a little better than maybe they did before, or maybe a lot of people have neglected training, and that will show whenever they come back into sports. And I think that's really important to look at, or at least really interesting, that all the players will have come in after not being able to work out as much and not being able to practice as much. And I think you'll see that a lot whenever you see their games, and the next coming seasons. Um, I think it's COVID-19. Is going to make a huge impact on sports and sports marketing. I believe that with the right policies and with the right guidance from exterior sources, that sports can continue to thrive and continue to do what they need to do to continue their seasons and pay their players.